Hi guys, and welcome to the second reading of The Knoll by Alan Eldridge, Steve Boyett and Maxine Miller. This is the second reading, so let's see how we go. Let's see what the story has for us today. On his knees with back straight, thick hands on squat thighs, knapsack beside him, Fungal felt the living and growing around him, mirror to the life and growth within. His whiskers felt curiously brittle with the power that charged the air of this claustral, dank cathedral, rank with the sour odour of rot and roots. After 10 deep slow breaths, he touched the wishing feather atop his cap, then said, "Spirit of mushroom, give me your presence and grant me a boon." In the centre of the ring of mushrooms a column of air thickened and undulated. Mushrooms are strange creatures, unique in nature and alien in design and spirit, and the soft presence he registered in the dark clearing triggered odd associations. Moonlight, a smell of starch, a delight in decay. The spirit said nothing which Fungal was accustomed to, but he felt its acknowledgement as he began to harvest the mushrooms he wanted, blessing each one before removing it from the earth. The poisonous ones he left for the turtles, who liked them. Breaking out of the forest cover on the way home, Bungle saw the sun about to touch the saw-toothed mountains, and he set down his bulging knapsack to watch his favourite time, when the eye of dusk closes to loose the spirits of twilight that dwell in the ephemeral world conjoining night and day. All around him Bungle felt the changing of the light, the sun's gentle alchemy that transformed the land. Spreading shafts splintered at the mountain's edge to shatter gold against shivering leaves. Baked dough grey, rock golden brown, glint quicksilver on a kingfisher splashing in the river. He closed his eyes and still could see the setting sun, felt it burning out there immeasurably far away, felt the land on which he stood swinging round it, felt the turning of the earth beneath his booted feet. Seasons and cycles, he thought. It all depends on rotation. Stars and planets, birth and life and death. He smiled. Even the stirring spoon that makes me gravies. In the air he sensed a bristling disturbance, small but sharp, like a ripple on a lake of winds. He felt a prickling in his thumbs, noted gnats scribbling frenzies above the ebony sheen of the lake. Most peculiar, he thought. Rain tonight, or I'm no judge. Best be's on my ways. High in the sky was something like a cloud, but ruler straight and gilded by the setting sun. It lengthened as Fungal watched with senses more subtle than sight. Fungal felt the hurtling metal thing that drew the line in the sky. He also felt the silent whirling things looking down from far above the sky, but they were part of another world that had only recently begun to concern him, and he felt their presence the way he knew the motion of crickets' legs and noodling of worms through the dirt, knew the trees light drinking and patient growth. The sun touched the mountains. Fungal felt an odd flutter inside the wing beat of something satisfied yet trepidant at the same time. Change of foot, he thought. Many roads are meetin' and partin' here today. Which was why he was out here after all. The sun lowered behind the mountains. Fungal opened his eyes. On this day when seasons met, he watched the day bleed into night and thought, well met. Above him the clouds changed colour, gold to yellow, to orange to cinnamon, 100 deepening shades between each. changing colour seemed to roughen their texture as they darkened. Was this something else that had changed? Fungal could not be sure, but it seemed sunsets had not appeared so bloody 40 or 50 years ago. Not so much murky sienna and brooding brick red. He sighed. But it's all so gradual, and your noggin plays a passel of tricks. The clouds edged toward grey. Fungal blessed the departed sun and lifted up his knapsack, bulging with mushrooms, grasses, pennyroyal, dill, and chamomile. He threaded furry arms through the sturdy willow bark straps, bent beneath the knapsack's weight, and descended into the valley. The mountain shadows lengthened toward him like fangs in a closing mouth. After a dozen paces he stopped. By his boots something glinted in the grass. Fungal bent and picked it up, a cylinder of thin wrought metal, white with a red and blue design, a teardrop-shaped hole in one end. Fungal set his nose against it and sniffed. Wee oosh! Some kind of ale, but nasty with chemicals. A human thing this. No human had yet set foot in Fungal's valley. He'd have felt it instantly if one had. So this must have been discarded by some thieving goblin. Yet another encroachment. Fungal's preference would have been to crush the container and bury it with apologies and blessings to the earth that would surround it, and over the course of centuries recycle it. But his friend Carr, he knew, collected such things, though why, Fungal could not imagine. So he emptied it, to be sure the awful ale would not taint his carefully gathered ingredients, then placed it in his pack and continued his descent into the valley. It was on the way back to his home, his head blanketed by bittersweet thoughts, that Fungal encountered what he later came to think of as the Parliament of Personages, travelling together toward Fungal's home. They were a delegation of forest folk, woodland elves, a three-pointed buck, an imp, several rabbits, hobgoblins, foxes, and brownies, a fastidious raccoon, a sextet of surly dwarves, a well-mannered skunk, a couple of trolls, and an ogre. The latter, huge and imposing, was a reformed carnivore, and Fungal had glimpsed him at a time or two petting rabbits with only the slightest hint of chagrin. A blue jay perched on his burly shoulder. Even as he hailed the group, Fungal felt a sense of the importance of their mission. Forest creatures dwell together in tacit communion, understanding their role in the great dance of life and death around them, but they rarely stepped out together. They halted on the path as Fungal approached them, and it did not escape the knoll that each face was as serious as a human being's prayer book. "Me blessings to ye one and all this fine evening," said Fungal. "And what sends your grave selves slouching toward my door?" They glanced nervously among themselves. Fungal waited patiently, understanding that they had some favour to ask him, and that the asking of favours from a shaman came difficult for most creatures. After a bit of glancing about and some prodding expressions, it became obvious that one of the dwarves had been elected their spokesperson. Uniroyal, thought Fungal, remembering the dwarf's name. Odd name for a forest creature. Then he remembered that the dwarf was a cobbler who had made an occupation of night-time sorties into the fringes of the land of No, in order to purloin rubber tyres, which he cut up in his workshop and used to resole boots. He did a roaring trade. In fact, Fungal recollected about the only boot-wearing creatures who did not dwell with Uniroyal the cobbler were gnolls. Traditionalist one and all, they still preferred wax hemp to protect their feet from nettles and briars, and sniffed at such a notion as material progress. Of course the dwarf could have named himself Michelin or Goodyear, which were fine names, and for a while Firestone had held a certain allure. But Uniroyal, what a ring, what grandeur! Uni, one, plus Royal, Royal one. Who could resist? Ahem, ahem, said the dwarf, raising a gnarled fist to his mouth to clear his throat politely. Good evening, Mr. Fungal, sir. A fine good evening to yourself, Master Cobbler. Uniroyal seemed pleasantly surprised at the honorific. We all, that is, us here plus the creatures hereabouts, which we represent, feel that we's being subjected to increasingly unendurable conditions from the continuous expansion of the empire of the human beings. What he's saying, interjected an elf, is that the land of No is stepping on our toes. Uniroyal nodded. There ain't a day goes by, he continued, gathering courage, when one of our brethren ain't uprooted from his home without a warning or a care. And for what? He demanded. Mills, said Diogo. Moles, corrected a troll. The skunk looked down sadly. More acres than I got hairs turned into flat, hard stuff you can't dig or plant, said Uniroyal. Streams not 10 clodhops. Clodhops is his measurement. 1 digit equals 1 foot. 2 digits equals 1 strider. 10 striders equals 1 mozzie. 10 mozzies equals a womble. 7 wombles equals a clodhop. 10 clodhops equals a grolthon. From here been nothing more'n muddy piddles swimming more with rubbish than with fish. You'd sooner gargle bees than drink from it. The 3-point buck hung his majestic head. Okay guys, I will call it quits for now and we'll continue this soon. Bye for now.